Hello, this is Robert Picardo, the holographic doctor from Star Trek Voyager, and Commander Woolsey from Stargate Atlantis. If I only get in Star Wars someday, I will have made the trifecta. And you're listening to Kneel Before Pod, because you are smart.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Here's to the finest crew in Starfleet. Engage. Captain Jean Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so.
Hello and welcome to Kneel Before Pod, the podcast that has been where no one has gone before and then back again. I'm your host Craig, and this topic is one I'm very excited about. Recently, Sir Patrick Stewart returned to the role of none other than Jean Luc Picard, so there just had to be a discussion about it. To help me with this high-risk, top-secret mission, I had to find some bridge officers. They're ready to be beamed in, so now let's hope I don't make a mess of this. Again. Energizing. So, standing on my transporter pad here, we have Laura. Welcome aboard.
Hello, thank you.
The beaming okay? I haven't used the transporter in a while, so it might be a bit glitchy.
Feel a bit woozy, but I think I'm alright.
That's more promising than the last podcasting contributors that I tried to beam in. Watch where you step, by the way. That might be them. Andrew, you're also here. Welcome aboard.
Yes, I am also here, and I'm pretty sure that all of me is here, and all in the right place. So, well done.
Yeah, just make sure you step over the charred remains of whoever was a guest on the podcast before.
Oh, is that what that is? I thought someone had just burnt a pizza and left it on the floor.
I mean, there's that too. There's all sorts going on there. Yeah, so that was that. Successful transporter, successful jokes. Brilliant, great start. Okay, so we're here to discuss the first episode of Star Trek Picard, which is a show that came on recently and I may or may not be very excited about. But before we do that, let's go to our customary non-related feature, Kneel Before and Rise Against. So, Laura, do you want to kick us off with a Rise Against?
Yeah. Ooh, this one's controversial. I watched John Wick Chapter 2 for the first time the other night and did not enjoy it as much as I expected to.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Oh, don't fight me.
And enjoy the first one?
I did, yeah. I just thought the second one didn't have the same, appeal for me, even though there was less of, dogs dying, which is always a pro.
That is true. That is very true.
Yeah. And I love Keanu Reeves, and I thought it was cool, but I wasn't, loving it as much as I wanted to. It counts as a thumbs down.
Okay. Well, the first one is better than the second one, although I think the third one might be the best.
Yeah, I still ain't seen the third one either, so...
What did you feel the second one was lacking in?
Substance, to be honest. I thought it was very much like a style over substance thing that they balanced a bit better in the first one. Even though everything was, well done, I didn't walk away from it feeling any particular way.
Fair enough.
But yeah. Sorry, Kanye, if you're listening. Love you still.
Yes, he's listening. He's an avid listener.
He's always listening.
He's always listening. I'm sure he would if you asked. He seems like a nice guy. And he would also give you a lot of money, because apparently that's what he does. He just has so much money, he just throws it at people. Like snowballs.
The dream.
It is the dream. But I'm not just after Keanu for his money. Just, I don't know, seems like a nice guy. Roll on Bill and Ted 3, the sequel that maybe nobody wants. Who knows?
We all want it.
I'm sure some people will enjoy it.
Yeah, until it comes out and it's like, shouldn't have made that. We'll see. I don't know, I can't predict the future. So, John Wick 2, not a huge fan. I loved it. But I think I've only seen it twice. I've seen the first one about a dozen times or something like that, and I've seen the third one once.
Why'd you torture yourself? First one's so sad.
But it's so good. It has that super cool nightclub action scene and yeah.
Well, that's the thing, because once you get past the sort of heartbreaking bit, and you can just revel in sort of taciturn minimalism, excessive badass styleness, technical terms.
All that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. John Wick evens out to being good, I guess, as a franchise. Who knows?
Yes. As a franchise, yes. Just have beef with the second one.
Yeah, you can kneel before or rise against the third one the next time you appear, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll have seen it by then, I promise.
Okay, Andrew, what are you rising against?
I'm actually very surprised to be rising against this, but circumstances dictate I must. And this is Justice League Dark. This is a comic book series which follows, instead of the standard Justice League who deal with superpowered threats to the world, Justice League Dark deal with supernatural threats. So it's very much focused on the magic and mystical side of DC Comics. And the characters are usually some combination of John Constantine and Zatanna, Black Orchid, Deadman, and Swamp Thing. Cool characters like that, which I absolutely love and have been looking forward to see what would be done with it. But unfortunately, I am no longer, with the news that the film and TV adaptations of it are now being overseen by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Don't like J.J. Abrams. Sick of the guy. Why is he getting attached to things I like all the time? Go away. Go do something else. Leave me alone.
So instead of this creepy, mystical horror darkness, which would have been so incredible in the hands of someone like Guillermo del Toro, who at one point was attached to it, we're instead going to have to deal with nonsensical fan service crap and his mystery box bull stuff.
Gotta love a mystery bot. Yeah.
It's just, I mean,
he has no words. That sums it up.
That's how bad it is.
No, the thing is, I have numerous words. I just can't say them because I know you generally like to keep dialogue clean in these recordings.
Yeah, it would just sound like someone's flatlining, I think. If someone's firing a lot of phasers or something, if you were to say what you thought of it.
And I'm sure as a series of comedy sound effects, blanking out all my superlatives, like an episode of The Osbournes or something, would be highly amusing. It really wouldn't kind of add much to the verbal discourse. Yeah, so basically just want to say that I am most decidedly not looking forward to seeing J.J. Abrams ruin another property that I have loved for many years. And I just hope to hell that the constant flux that these productions have been in will eventually see him exit it before he manages to do any harm to it.
Sadly, whenever Abrams is attached to something, it tends to happen.
Yes, I'm aware of this, but I'm trying to be hopeful and positive.
At least it keeps him away from Superman for a little while longer.
Small mercies. Take them where you can get them.
Yeah. Laura, are you a fan of Abrams at all?
Not really, no, I have to say. But I probably haven't seen as much as you guys have of his. But, you know, some of his stuff that I have seen, although I tend to like it generally, I think he comes across pretty wanky. That doesn't count as a swear word.
No, it does.
Okay, cool.
I believe it's a category C swear word.
Yeah, that's it. If they can say it on a CW show, they can say it here. That's about my benchmark.
Fair play. Yeah, no, not a huge fan, and to be honest, kind of resentful of how successful he is. So
yeah, he doesn't deserve it. There's other people more deserving.
No.
Yeah.
Agreed.
He's just so mediocre. I call him the master of mediocrity. I think that's about the best description we can muster for the guy.
Yeah, sums him up quite nicely, actually.
Yeah. It's not going to go on the back of any DVD cases. Master of Mediocrity brings you another Star Wars movie. The less said about that, the better, other than the sort of 2-hour podcast that, at the time of recording, hasn't been published yet. Which you can probably listen to before you listen to this. Okay, my rise against, funnily enough, it's another Disney live-action remake. We're getting Bambi now. I mean, are we surprised?
Yeah.
No. Do we like it? No. Do we need it? No. Do we want it? No. That's all I have to say on it. It's happening, and who cares?
Nice and succinct.
There's really not any more that you can say about it that hasn't
But
been
you will
said.
anyway.
You can't say much more about it than has already been said about the various other live-action / photoreal CGI remakes of classic Disney properties, because the arguments for them are all the same. There's no need for them to exist and to rehash them without attempting to add much of anything new to them. It just screams of cynical cash grab.
Yeah, although there might be a human being in this one, which suggests that it can actually be called live action.
Where does the human being come in? I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Bambi, but I don't remember that.
Well, the guy that shoots Bambi's mother is like a human. You don't see him in the...
Spoilers.
That's such a weak point. I'm like, come on, just call it like CGI and get it done.
Yeah, but
Fucking live action.
They might put some extra with a gun in it, and then they can say it's live action because there is one human that appears once.
Sponsored by the NRA.
Sponsored by people that murder deer and eat them.
And wish nothing else than to traumatise a new generation of children.
God. Almost as bad as The Fox and the Hound.
I haven't seen that.
Oh,
God,
I have.
Right. It's soul-destroying.
I have seen every single Disney movie several times because Jana owns all of them and loves all of them and watches all of them regularly.
Has she been buying them again when they've been getting remade?
No, she hasn't been because, as far as she's concerned, they don't count.
That's valid.
Yeah. So let's get away from this negativity and move on to something positive. So, Laura, what are you kneeling before?
This isn't very on-brand for your podcast. However, I recently watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel's third season, which I'm aware came out last month, but I'm a bit late to the party. And it was very excellent, as previous seasons have been. So watch it if you haven't.
Never seen this. I don't really know what it is. But cool. I'm glad you like it.
It's really good. It's genuinely really, really good. It's like historical comedy. It's on Amazon Prime. It's just really funny and just great. Just watch it.
Okay.
This has now been a sponsored post.
It's a shame it didn't go with you last, because then we could have segued into another Amazon Prime thing, but it's not working out that way. Okay. Fine, maybe I'll check it out one of these days. I could add it to the ever-long list of things that I'll never watch.
Yeah,
But
I'm
would
very
one day like to.
skeptical.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. There's a lot of CW superhero shows on the drawing board. It's not going to happen. Andrew, have you heard of this? Do you have an opinion?
I am aware of it, and I did quite like the look of it, but it's one of those ones that I haven't ever got around to, because it's like my quest to watch absolutely everything ever made. There are only physically so many hours in every single day, and even I need to admit that every now and then I need to sleep. So some things end up falling by the wayside as I kind of keep caught up with other things. And unfortunately, this was one of them. So it is one that I hope to get around to at some point, and will be kind of disappointed if I end up not doing so.
Cool.
Good.
So-
Love to hear it.
Yeah. So what are you kneeling before, Andrew? What's your thing that you love this week?
At the risk of countering what we were talking about 5 minutes ago regarding remakes, there is a new Anaconda movie getting made. The Anaconda films are a series of horror monster movies, basically starring gigantic CGI snakes which attack and eat people. They are all complete and utter trash. Every single one of them, every single minute of them, and I absolutely love them. I can't justify this, and I will not attempt to, but I just have a passion for CGI monster movies. They kind of like really bad and cheesy things made by the Asylum or the Sci-Fi Channel. Just because they're all so much fun, and they don't take themselves seriously. And they're the kind of films that you can just watch with a bunch of friends, and everyone getting drunk and having a good time, and just revel in the ridiculous nonsense playing out before you. And now there's going to be more of it. And that makes me happy.
Is this a reboot or a remake or just another one?
It's currently a reboot, which would put it as a documentary in the Amazon, picking up a hunter with a very, very dodgy Paraguayan accent who is searching for this gigantic creature to trophy hunt. Or if it's anything like the second one, it will involve a search for this mystical flower, the eating of which makes people immortal. Or if it's anything like Anaconda versus Lake Placid, then it will be a giant-ass snake versus a giant-ass crocodile. And that is the stuff that I'm here for. It's great fun. I mean, I could wax lyrical for hours about everything that makes these kind of films so entertaining, but I won't, because I appreciate that not everyone has the same passion and reverence for such films, so I will just simply stop talking about them now.
Oh my god, there's 5 of them already? Just looked it up.
Yep.
I'm shaken.
I know, right?
Alright.
I'm surprised there's not more than that, to be honest. I thought there might have been more, because you hear about these horror franchises There seems to be like 100 of them somehow because they don't care about what medium they release them in.
Well, look, like the one that's coming out is going to be the 6th, so clearly they're still going.
Yeah.
We may get to 100 yet.
I'm sure it'll be exactly what people expect from it. There's a place for that in society. Not everything has to be highbrow or even medium brow. Some things are just giant snakes eating people. And that's okay. Well, my deal before, it's a bit of an oldie, but since we had a large podcast hiatus, didn't get to talk about some of the other stuff I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to kneel before the second Sonic trailer. The one with the redesigned Sonic hedgehog.
Yes.
Because I think it looks alright. And I'm in the minority of people that thought the first trailer looked alright. I wasn't hot on the design, but I would have accepted it. When they redesigned it, I was like, okay. I don't know why you didn't just use this design in the first place. But you're listening to people and you want people to see your film and stuff. But I don't know, the second trailer is very differently edited to make it maybe put its best foot forward. I mean, maybe it's just the same old crap and it'll be unwatchable when it comes out. But I'm kind of optimistic that it's going to be alright. And it's out on Valentine's Day, and I can't think of any better way to spend Valentine's Day than go to see Sonic the Hedgehog on my own. I'll be one of those people.
Love
people
that.
will avoid me. Yeah. Sonic was a big part of me growing up. It's the first video game I ever completed.
Aww.
Yeah, and I think the film looks okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty much in agreement. I wasn't that taken with the first trailer, because I just think that the editing of it was all off, as music was completely incongruous and inappropriate, and I don't know why they did it. But the second one is just so much more encouraging, as it captures the kind of manic energy that I assume the film itself will be largely driven by. And also, it was actually just a lot funnier as well, with the way that the jokes were presented.
Yeah, and what's his name? Ben Schwartz, is that his name? Voice in Sonic. John Ralphio, as I know him. He's good.
Oh, yeah. I really like him.
Neil McDonough's in it, although I would have probably put him as Dr. Robotnik. That would have been hilarious.
And instead we have Jim Carrey playing mid-90s Jim Carrey.
I'm sure that'll be fine. I mean, it's very fitting. It's a mid-90s property. It's late 80s, really, but kind of 90s as well.
The first the Sonic on Mega Drive was 1991, and was actually the first game for the first console I ever owned. So it actually holds a special place for me as well.
And I've got the version on my phone, and I've completed it a few times on my phone, which is amazing. Never thought when I was playing Sonic as a young lad that I would ever be playing it on a very small mobile device. Isn't technology grand?
Indeed.
Yes, and I am just trying not to think about when Sonic was released in relation to when Laura was born.
No comment.
I thought you were going to say I'm trying not to think about the Sonic fandom, which would have also been valid.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. That's it's not worth thinking about, put it that way. So, Laura, do you have an opinion on the Sonic trailer? You looking forward to it? Could you care less?
Can't say that I particularly care because Sonic means nothing to me. Like, it was never part of my childhood or anything like that. But I quite like the theory that I've heard, which is that the first trailer was just a PR stunt and that was never going to be the actual design. And they just did it to, like, really bring out on the media spheres, etc.
Yeah, I've heard that thought, but I don't know. It doesn't suit their purposes because that could have so easily backfired to... This is a load of crap, I'm not going to watch this.
Yeah, but I think it's the fact they then were like, oh, well, we're going to do what the people want to do. I like the idea that it is a PR stunt, because if it is, it's kind of genius. But I don't know if I buy it either.
I'm not too convinced by it, largely to do with the VFX house, who did all the CGI for Sonic before and after the redesign.
They all got fired. Yeah, that's awkward.
It's like going on business now.
Yeah, it's awkward. But please support this film that's made by evil people, I guess.
People who don't pay creatives on time.
Yeah, let's swerve past that. I'm calling it now. There's going to be a post-credit scene that introduces Tails in some way. Or Knuckles, or both.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, yeah, Tails and or Knuckles.
Yeah, it's going to happen. I'm sure I'm the first person to say that.
Undoubtedly, because this is such a genius and revolutionary thought that is simply far too complex for it to have occurred to anyone before.
Yeah, no one else thought of it. No one except me. Right, cool. That's us, made it through the Kneel Before Rise Again segment. Well done, guys. Got some good chat in there. So, Before we start with our feature topic, I'm going to recommend another Star Trek thing. Nick Cook, who occasionally appears in this podcast, very occasionally, is making another fan film. If you don't know, he runs the Star Trek Intrepid fan production, which is the only Scottish Star Trek fan production that exists at the moment, at least as far as I know. So what he's doing a bit of crowdfunding on Indiegogo to just get the film made, pay for consumables like food and transport and batteries and all that kind of stuff. He's trying to encourage people to pay very small amounts to help fund the thing. I personally gave a tenner to it so I can see my name appear in the credits. My name in the credits of some Star Trek thing. Got to happen. It only cost me a tenner. So if you have a spare tenner or even a couple of quid, throw it his way, give him a hand with it, and even if you don't, you'll still see it for free. And we'll probably share it here. I'll put the link to Indiegogo in the show notes. It's doing quite well so far. So good luck, Nick, and we're behind you. We can call that our sponsor, perhaps. Even though they didn't give us any money.
Except you're the one giving them money.
Yes, I'm his sponsor. Yeah, I don't know. A partnership, we'll call it that. So yeah, check it out. You could do worse. That's kind of his words, you could do worse. He's very modest when it comes to his own productions. He doesn't want people to get their hopes up. It's good quality, it really is. They do a lot with a little, which the best fan productions do. You'd be surprised at what some people can come up with in their bedrooms, so to speak.
I've seen all of the previous films that Nick has made, and they are actually really, really good. Even though they are obviously very cheaply made, and for the most part, they're very short episodes. They're still able to capture the essence of what Star Trek is, which, when it comes down to it, I think is the most important thing about fan films.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek was never cheaply made, was it? Always top drawer budgets on Star Trek. That's our recommendation. Right, now on to our feature topic. This is a Star Trek thing they spent a bit more money on than Nick's fan film. Not much, a little bit more. We'll kind of start with a bit of connection, or what your connection is. So, Laura, why don't you start? What's your connection to Next Generation and the character of Picard? Do you have one, or is this your first toe in the water?
So I did used to watch Next Gen when it was on after school, so that means it was fairly irregular, and it also means that I'm not entirely convinced I've seen all of it, or in the right order. I've seen enough of it that I know who the characters are, etc., and I knew who Picard was, and I knew what his character was like, which I don't even think is necessary for the enjoyment of the show, but for myself, I came into Picard actually knowing who the character and what the overarching story and vibe was. So yeah. So
you have some connection, but not a huge connection.
I don't call myself a big ass fanboy because I'm very aware that I may not have actually seen all of it.
That's fair enough.
Worth investigating one day.
Yeah, although TNG is syndicated, so it's designed to be consumed in as little or as large quantities as possible. Because it was airing at a time where you might miss an episode and never see it again, so you have to be able to tune in and understand what's going on.
Yeah, which is pretty much what I did, and I never really had an issue, so it's all good.
Cool. Andrew, what's your connection to these two things, which are the same thing?
Yeah, well, it's actually a kind of similar thing. My first exposure to it was also the weekday evening schedule random episode. It was being 6:30 on BBC Two.
After The Simpsons.
That's the one, yes.
The good old days.
There was always something interesting that would be on then. One thing that particularly appealed to me about Star Trek and Next Generation in general was basically the spaceships, because I really enjoy imagining having my own spaceship and how I would design it, on what I would put into it. When watching Star Trek gave me a lot of inspiration about how that might work visually and how these things might actually be constructed, because I spent a lot of time as a kid just thinking about nonsense and imagining nonsense.
So you're an angsty kid doodling at the back of the class, drawing spaceships.
Pretty much.
Well, you have to own that. Now it's cool, or it was cool at some point.
That's the only thing. It's definitely cool to be that kind of person now, just not so much in the late 90s.
Just like it's cooler to be a Star Trek fan now than it was in the late 90s. Yeah, before our time.
Frustrating.
Yeah. So that's cool. My connection to TNG is quite profound. It was basically my Star Trek growing up. I watched the original series, I watched Deep Space Nine, I watched Voyager when they were on, but TNG was always my favourite. Picard was always my favourite captain. I just love the ensemble cast on Next Gen, and I've seen every episode so many times, even the crappy ones. Yes, there are crappy episodes of Star Trek, who knew? Some really, really bad episodes. But I always got something out of it, and Picard was always someone to look up to because that's who he's designed to be, and he's flawed but has a lot of integrity. You'll listen to him when he talks, even if he's talking nonsense like in some of the crappy episodes. But such a great character, such a great show. It's something I grew up with, and it's formed a lot of my worldview, I guess, by watching that show. So hearing that Jean Luc Picard was returning, I couldn't believe it. I never thought that Patrick Stewart would play the character ever again. I don't think he ever thought he would play it ever again. But here he is, so many years later. 18 years after his last appearance, not including video games. He's doing it. He seems to be on board with it because he's doing another season, which is, again, something I would never expect. So, good on him. And I can't wait to see more. So, that's my connection. I'm the super nerd, or the TNG super nerd anyway, of the group. So, looks like we'll have a bit of a varied perspective as we move on, which is good. So Laura, what did you think of the first episode? Just without spoilers here, we'll get Picard to take us into the spoiler section later on.
For me, it took a little bit of getting into, but once we were, into the action and refamiliarized with the environment, I really enjoyed it. I'd say it's better enjoyed having seen the first 3 episodes because it's more of like part 1 of a 3-episode arc of sorts.
And you're lucky enough to have been given the first 3 episodes.
Don't be bitter.
Yeah. No spoilers. No spoilers.
Like, I'm more like me. I live in London. I can actually go to these events that Mark and Phil keep emailing us about.
Hey, I went to London as well, but I didn't get the first 3 episodes.
No, I just mean like some people might switch off because episode 1 might not have been everything they hoped for, and it's worth remembering that it's just chapter 1 of a long overarching 10-hour series that's more cinematic than it is serial.
So try and stay away from the
that would be my 2 cents on it.
The knowledge of the 2 episodes that we haven't seen, which should make your speculation quite interesting.
I would never
just want to ask you. What do you think's going to happen in the second episode? It's like, well, this is... Oh
no!
Just spoiled everything. Okay. Andrew, what did you think of the first one?
Oh, I really, really enjoyed it, actually. I wasn't quite sure what to expect going into it, but I think the story was set up quite nicely, and without giving too much away or where the story is actually going to go, because quite often it becomes apparent how a story is going to play out from minute 1, but with this, there's still some mystery. And I'm quite looking forward to seeing how it all develops.
Yeah. Absolutely loved the first episode. I can see why people might be criticising the pacing, although I didn't have an issue with it. I think it's actually more in line with the pacing of a fairly standard TNG episode. It's just takes its time to get there because that's just the style. And I like that because a lot of my criticisms of sort of modern stuff is you don't get enough time to be in the moment. They introduce something and then they blow past it because they want to move on to the next thing, such as the latest Star Wars movie, for example. Stuff like that I hate because it just makes everything meaningless, but I felt like everything that was introduced in that episode had meaning, it had impact, and it's a character study as far as I'm concerned, and I hope the entire series will be that because, it is called Picard, so it is his perspective, it's about him, it's focused on him, so I feel like I'm going to get that, and I really like that. I thought the first episode did a great job of just bringing me back into that world and immersing me in it once again, so I had no issues with the pacing whatsoever. I was happy to be along for the ride. Shall we get Jean Luc to take us into the spoilers?
Engage.
Yes.
And you just totally stepped on Jean Luc's moment there, but okay.
Sorry. You can cut it out.
Yeah. No. People have to compare them. Who does it best, Andrew or Picard? Answers on a postcard.
Engage.
Right, now we can spoil everything. apart from the second and third episode. I've not seen it, and I want to be surprised.
I will spoil nothing.
You better not.
We just waited.
Yeah. Otherwise, there will be consequences. Dire consequences.
Just kick me out the chat if I start to veer towards unfamiliar territory.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I said before we launched into the spoiler zone, it is a character study. It's focused on Picard. The first episode is very much about what is his life now and where is it heading, and I really like that. I just, I like the fact that he's retired, he's on his vineyard, he's wasting away, in effect. I really liked that idea, because there's a lot of revivals at the moment where you see old characters returning. Look at Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi or things like that, and people have a defined image of what they expected this character to be, and for a lot of people that didn't work out with Luke Skywalker. And I imagine this isn't how people might have pictured Picard, although I would have kind of saw him up like this, because the last episode of The Next Generation has him end up very much like this, even though it's a possible future. But the idea that he's full of regret, he's kind of running out the clock on his life, I thought it was an interesting idea, and the fact that he has to get kind of kicked in the arse to get back into action and do something and be who he was, I loved that. Or what did you think of that idea?
I didn't see the film which it follows on from, so I don't know what his character was like in that, but I think it's perfectly credible, especially if you're committing to a character study, for him to have to work back to his version of the character that fans love so much. And I think if you're going to have him in his old age, I think they said he's meant to be like 92 at this point. There's no way that he's going to be the same person and he's going to have that same outlook on life that he did during Gen.
Yeah, and they play fast and loose with the events that led to this point as well, because another thing I hate is when characters that know what they're talking about sit and talk about it as if they don't know what they're talking about to fill in the audience. Mm-hmm. Any conversation he has with people who know what happened is framed as if they all know what happened, and you have to sort of figure out some of it through context. So it's like, Romulus was destroyed, which we know if you've seen the 2009 movie, but this is a much more in-depth sort of look at it on a more personal level. So you get that, you get the fact that those two Romulan helpers of his are really close to him, they're like family, but at no point does he say, oh, you guys are like my family, and you've been here for 20 years, and look after, yeah, we know we've been here for 20 years, we know that we've been here for 20 years. And I just hate that kind of exposition, so I love that they managed to avoid that.
And another great thing about that example specifically is that it was clear that there was years of history between these characters, just from the way that they were interacting with one another. And because of that, you didn't need it spelled out exactly how they met or how they come to live on Picard's vineyard, because that kind of information isn't specifically necessary. Just when everything that these people mean to each other can be summed up in a single glance, or just the way that they speak to each other.
Yeah, there was that line where, don't forget who you are, we haven't. That kind of tells you a lot about how much they value him, and almost that they're paying him back, in effect, by looking after him in his old age as well. That's just what I took from it. But
And with the whole interview segment of that, obviously the point of it was to bring the audience up to speed with the relevant historical events which happened in the years that there hasn't been any more Star Trek. But it also served quite well to establish what kind of person Picard currently is. Because when he was talking about Starfleet abandoning its duties to simply give aid to people in need, the righteous anger and disgust and contempt that he has for this institution that he once believed in, it shows you more than anything how betrayed he feels for giving so much of his life to this institution, and then for it to just abandon the ideals that it's supposed to stand for. And also the way that he was describing the disaster and the rescue mission, it seemed to me that Patrick Stewart, while performing it, was actually visualising everything that was happening and was able to react to that.
yeah, who knew that Patrick Stewart was such a good actor?
I know, right?
What a revelation. No one knew. I mean, he used to be on a crappy sci-fi TV show, and turns out he's actually an actor. Who thought? For the future generations that cut out that clip and use it out of context, I do not think Star Trek The Next Generation is crappy. But they won't cut out that part of the clip. They'll just use the part where I said it's crappy. So no, I completely agree. I think the whole Starfleet values thing is interesting because one of the things I was most concerned about before watching this is that the version of Picard would get would be someone that's kind of turned his back on his own values and things like that. And because that happens in a lot of revivals as well, where it's like, oh, this guy isn't who they used to be, and you should never meet your heroes and whatever else. But this is a Jean Luc Picard that is the same guy that he was, effectively, in terms of at least what he believes in, that he was the last time we saw him. And I mean, he's abandoned the notion of doing something about it, but he still thinks that way. And it's very clear that he's in opposition to the prevailing opinion, because the interviewer seems very xenophobic in some ways, at least towards Romulans, which I'm not sure how xenophobia looks in the Federation, how you hate some races and not others, but you just have to go with it, I suppose. But when she talks about Romulan lives, and he's like, no, lives, and it's that distinction that tells you everything. And I know Patrick Stewart said it's inspired by current goings-on where there's a lot of isolationism chat in the news and in politics and things, and the fact that obviously science fiction, and particularly Star Trek, has always reflected the time it's made in, it's a perfect story to explore.
Yeah, and the fact that you can no longer trust the overarching established institutions is also one that resonates with the current political climate.
Yeah, the system fails the people. Yeah, that's the overriding message there. And there might be a bit of, is Picard as an old white man the right role model for the new future? There might be a bit of that in there too. I mean, it's not there in the first episode, but I can see it coming in.
Yeah, maybe there'll be some sort of generational interplay where we see different perspectives on the state of the universe, but can't forget that this is a character study of Picard, and Picard is a character that's a pillar of the over Star Trek universe, and I don't expect them to go too much into what comes next. I think it's more about closing a chapter.
Yeah, although maybe once he gets out into the universe again, he'll start to see how different things are while he's being locked away in his little vacuum. And that'll alter his perception of the universe he lives in. I mean, people are always growing, or people should always be growing and changing and responding to new ideas, so I don't see him not doing that once he gets out there and gets to look at what's going on out there. Because he's very isolated, that's kind of the point. You know, he doesn't allow visitors, he just sits there, walks his dog, who's apparently a terrible actor.
Oh, his dog. I love this dog.
Yeah, apparently the dog's not a very good actor, according to interviews on Will Wheaton's The Ready Room, which is actually a good watch if you haven't seen it. They wanted to do more with the dog, but they couldn't because it wouldn't cooperate. So
I think that because it wasn't a trained acting dog, it is actually like Patrick Stewart's own dog.
Yeah,
which you can really tell in moments when the dog's around him, because the way the dog's acting, and he just looks so happy and joyful to be just near him.
Yeah,
because that's exactly the same kind of unconditional love and excitement that I see in Igor's face every single day. This like ridiculously stupid face looking up at me. But at the same time, it's just like, I love you, love me too. Sorry, I like dogs.
Really? Would never have guessed. Yeah. Anyway, back to Picard. Yes, he has a dog. He's called it Number One, which I think is hilarious.
I like that.
Although it'd be funny if Riker and the dog ever share a scene, and Picard calls on Number One, and Riker goes to him first. Who is the more obedient, the dog or Riker? We'll see Riker eventually, so we might get that scene. I hope we get that scene. That'll be hilarious. And obviously Picard's very haunted as well. You know, he has dreams about playing cards with Data, with kind of anachronistic uniforms on the wrong ship. Which, yeah, it's a dream. Go, whatever. As an aside, I thought the work on Brent Spiner to de-age him was superb. In the trailers you could kind of tell, but in the final render in the actual episode, it's so well done. And it's the fact that he still like misses Data and dreams about him every night and doesn't want to wake up, because waking up means waking up to a world that doesn't have Data, and I love that. But I do wonder how people who don't really know who Data is will respond to that because this is very much a reference geared toward people like me.
I feel like if you don't know about it, it probably doesn't have much emotional resonance, but as long as you understand, and I think they make it pretty clear that this is someone from his past whom he feels a lot of guilt about and a lot of regret, and someone that he loved, which I think is completely apparent whether you know who Data is or not, then you'll get what you need to get from those scenes.
Yeah, and there's some dialogue that points you in the direction of who Data is as well. At least in a nutshell.
And even though it would have helped to have seen Nemesis to understand what ultimately happened to Data, I think in the context of the scenes themselves and just what gets spoken about in dialogue, it does tell you all that you really need to know for the terms of the plot. And I agree that their interaction tells you that this is someone who meant a great deal to Picard, and you don't need to have seen all of their personal history to be able to realise that.
Yeah, it's the right use of nostalgia, I think. You'll get more out of it if you know the material. If you don't know the material, you'll hopefully still get enough to be able to follow it to the conclusion that they want you to reach. And that's the way it should work in all nostalgic properties, I think, rather than substituting nostalgia for story, which this doesn't. I think the nostalgia informs the story, but it isn't the story, which is kind of refreshing.
Exactly, yeah, because too often nostalgia is just used to simply rehash everything that's gone before.
Like another franchise that has Star in the title.
Oh yeah, it's a very good comparison. It never occurred to me. Or the man responsible for it, I may have mentioned not too long ago.
Yeah, but he's very significant, and I think there'll be more to it as well. I could have probably done without the dream that gives him the answer to the question of where to go next and what to look at next. I think that was a bit on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's different if it's just a dream that he doesn't understand, or it's just one of his like daily weird dreams that star Data and have him dressed in his old uniform and painting on a vineyard. But the fact that it's very much this, oh, I know where to look next because I had a dream about it. It's a little bit clumsy, I think.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like there may be a little bit more to it than that, than just this simply a usefully prophetic dream giving the answers. I think it's something to do with Data's consciousness somehow kind of existing in the ether somewhere, and this was him trying to communicate with Picard. Because they were very specific about the ending of Nemesis, where it's implied that Data transferred his consciousness into B4 to a copy of him, but in this episode it was very, very clearly specified that didn't work. And I just thought that was a very, very specific thing to bring up if it isn't going to have some relevance later.
Yeah, you could be right. Who knows? I mean, I didn't hate it. Obviously, you put Brent Spiner in a scene and he looks like he's 20 years younger or whatever. I'm going to be impressed, but at the same time, I was like, oh, that's convenient. What a convenient dream. It was still a good scene. It's on to Dash, this mysterious young woman that appears to Picard and asks for his help because she has a vision of him once she becomes River Tam, essentially.
Yeah.
I liked her, and I really liked her dynamic with Picard, and I was actually disappointed when she ended up dying because I think there was more to it there. Although it's possible she'll come back, given what she is, in some way, but I don't know, I think there was more they could have played with there. It's certainly unexpected to have her killed off in the first episode, especially with the trailers indicating that this is a big deal and this is what starts this whole thing off.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly explains why marketing was so circumspect about exactly who she was and what kind of part she would be playing in the series.
Yeah.
Because to have gone into too much would have ended up spoiling that shock ending of her dying. I saw her as someone who was representative of the regrets that Picard has, specifically regarding what happened with Romulus, which in itself gives enough of an explanation as to why this random girl just turns up out of the blue for asking for his help, and he provides it without even asking a single question, because that's the person he is.
Yeah, I'm glad they avoided the, no, I don't want to be involved anymore, leave me alone, I just want to be alone. It was as soon as she appeared, he was like, how can I help? You know, come in, have some tea.
Earl Grey.
Decaf.
Yeah, it's very... Decaf Earl Grey, that's the one.
New.
Maybe she's allowed caffeine. Picard's not.
I don't think she needs it with the state of her.
Yeah.
That's true.
Although he didn't specify the temperature of the tea, which kind of bothered me.
Oh, I just took that to be swapping out like the final thing for hot, just to say decaf as just like another indication that he's getting older.
Yeah. Plus, you think the replicator would know his favourites by now. How do replicators work? Well, I mean, I know in theory how they work, but in terms of the interface, does it just remember your preferences? Would it just make me, I don't know, pizza every time I walk past one? Because it knows that I like pizza?
You wish.
That's the dream.
Oh, great. God, it would be so good. I wish I had a replicator. It would be amazing. Yeah. But yeah, he invites her in, wants to help her immediately, and she sort of leaves in the middle of the night because she doesn't want him to be put in any danger because she knows that people are after her. The River Tam thing was a bit of a joke, but it's very similar. She has this kind of inbuilt instinct that becomes active at certain points. Although she's not quite as weird and cryptic as River is, she's much more confused, and she's not human, but thinks she is. And I find that quite interesting, this whole idea that there's androids running about who think that they're human. It's a bit Blade Runner, I suppose.
It's very Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Asking all kinds of questions about what humankind really is and what AI is and how the two are differentiated. But I guess we're not going to go all that much into it, supposedly, because I don't think that's the point they're focusing on at the moment.
Well, they may do. I mean, there was an entire episode of TNG that was about just that very subject, where it was decided that Data was property, and Picard argues that he's a person, which is one of the greatest episodes. And yeah, it raises these things. It's like, what is sentience? You know, in that episode, Picard asks Maddox, who is mentioned in this episode and will almost certainly return before it all ends, asks him to prove that Picard is sentient, which he can't, because how do you do that? How do you prove it? And that's kind of part of the point. So you've got this potentially sentient android, or this pair of potentially sentient androids, or perhaps even more. We don't know. It's a whole mysterious thing. Although I refuse to believe that her necklace is unusual.
Yeah.
Right?
Everyone keeps commenting, well, that's really weird. I've never seen that before. It's two circles.
Circles.
I legit have a necklace like that. Like, I was like, what do you mean it's distinctive? Like, what is jewelry like in the future?
I mean, you need that kind of visual marker, but I think the design team could have done a bit more work to come up with something that
Oh, wow,
looks
two
unusual.
circles. How unique.
Yeah, oh wow. I've never seen two circles intersecting before. That must mean that they're twins, because only twins would wear a necklace like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. She could have had like the heart necklace that was cut in half or something. You know, that one.
Because that's so unusual.
Yeah, well, maybe in the 24th century it is. No one wears such tacky jewellery anymore.
It's retro now.
But I found that interesting, and another favourite scene of mine in the episode was when Picard went to talk to the professor at the Daystrom Institute, played by Alison Pill. I forget her actual name, which I'm totally blanking on, but...
Yeah, same.
Yeah, but she was really good. I like these long, intriguing dialogue scenes in Star Trek episodes. And it's the fact that they were sitting there talking about something that was really interesting, and the dialogue was very naturalistic as well. It felt like a real conversation. And it was moving the plot forward, and it was telling you things that you didn't know before and telling you things that you needed to know, and it was really well done. And I see in the trailer for the rest of the season that she's going to join him on his Firefly-type expedition. So that's good.
And seeing as her name was, I think, second in the title sequence, it would be kind of surprising if she wasn't going to stick around.
Yeah, but it could be like in Discovery, where Michelle Yeoh's credited in the first 2 episodes and then isn't after that.
Well, that's the point, yeah.
So you never know with title sequences now, especially when you just skip them.
Which I reckon most people will have done.
Yeah, you watch it once, maybe twice, and then you skip it.
Yeah.
So impatient, must not endure this 90 seconds of music, I'll just move on.
To be fair, I didn't think the title sequence was very good, so don't think anyone's missing much.
I don't know, the more I saw it, the more I quite liked it. I like how all these kind of pieces of glass coalesce into being Picard. I thought the music was nice. It's less sort of epic than previous Star Trek themes, but I think it fits the tone of what they're going for.
Well, I think that's going back to it being a character study rather than an adventure show. So it follows it would be more appropriate for the music to be something a bit more subdued rather than the overstated bombast that TNG has.
Yeah, it's a different era, it's a different tone, it's a different feel. So it should be different. I mean, I don't think I'll watch the opening credit that many more times, to be honest, because who's got time for that? But I appreciated what was there. That whole once or twice that I'll watch it, be alright.
Over the last couple of years, I on and off rewatched the entire run of Smallville. And after a while, it was just like, I am so sick of this song.
It's a good song, though. You got it.
That's the thing, it's a good song. Just listening to it 200 times in relatively quick succession can make even best of things a little grating.
Yeah, it does get a bit much after a while. Although we'd only have to watch this one like 10 times if we were watching it, so at least for now. So anything else on Daj? Did anything about her stand out more? I reckon the rest of the series will be focused on her twin sister, who we only just met, and who seems to be kind of getting stalked by a weird Romulan guy who's very interested in her necklace again, because it's so unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is interested in like where she grew up, or her family, or her sister, and all that stuff. This is a weird first conversation.
Yeah, he's not very subtle.
No. It's like, he might as well walk up and say, I am a spy.
Like, ooh, and nefarious.
He's like, I'm not as famous as my brother. His brother being Luke Treadaway, who probably won't appear.
No, doubtful.
So, yeah, anything else on Daj that stood out to people? You know, the fact that she's superhuman and very vulnerable as well.
I was quite interested in the conversation that she had with her mother, or who she thought was her mother, or however they want to play it. Because there was a whole thing made about how she knew that she had gone to Picard without being able to explain how. And I think that suggests that she's going to at least have some part to play as the mystery, like who Daj actually is, gets unfolded. But I just thought it was a slightly unusual plot point to just leave hanging.
Yeah, and they'll definitely do more with it, because the mother will be a fixture, I would imagine, because otherwise why have that scene, right?
Yeah.
Laura, you got anything else to say on Daj?
Not particularly. I feel like she wasn't all that developed because she more or less serves as a plot device to introduce a bunch of different threads that we're going to develop and wind up in the next few episodes. I think it's pretty smart to use her for shock factor at the end of the first episode and introduce the actress again as Daj's sister.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything much more to say about Daj herself.
Yeah, some of the dialogue was interesting about her memories, where Picard says, yeah, that's a beautiful memory, and it's yours. But he didn't say, and it's real. You know, it's still like, oh no, everything that you think probably isn't real, but it doesn't make it any less yours. So, you know, let's hold on to that. And somehow she's Data's daughter, and there's this whole thing about cloning from a chip or something, which I'm not so sure about. It doesn't seem very science-based, you know.
Star Trek not being scientifically accurate?
Hey, they used to have scientific consultants that they would maybe ignore, but they were there. It's like, how did this work? It's like, yeah, that's not how supernovas behave. And it's like, well, we've written the script already, so, you know, it's... No, but they used to try and get at least some of it right, at least in a theoretical sense. The thing is, when you're making a TV show in the 60s or even the 80s, and later, it's, our understanding of that science keeps changing. Mm-hmm. So suddenly you have to rewrite your own rules, because if you want to remain current with science, then it just has to behave differently. But I'm not sure there's any theories about reconstructing an artificial consciousness from a single chip or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's the equivalent of like you take your graphics card out of your PC and can grow another PC.
I wish. That'd be very, very handy.
Yeah. Although you might just grow another slow laptop. So I guess we'll find out, and we'll find out if it has any basis in scientific fact. Maybe they'll cut to a TED talk that'll be like, no, this is okay. It works, kind of. You know, at least it's not as dumb as jumping through the universe using spores.
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, well, maybe it is. Maybe it is that dumb. In fact, it probably is. There's also the quantum archive. I'm not sure how that works. It's like, does Picard have a room inside of there that he goes in and he can call back stuff that's like stored somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or is it just like in Endgame, when Scott Lang just asks, like, okay, yeah, he just sticks quantum in front of a bunch of words to make it sound sciencey?
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek's never done that.
Heaven forbid.
I don't know, I found it quite interesting, because at first I thought, does he own this entire warehouse? And then when I watched it again, I was like, oh no, he doesn't, he's just going there. But he has some stuff stored, but I don't know how it's stored. And they didn't seem interested in explaining it to me. It was just something that he could access. So his painting is either a recreation of that painting, or it's the actual painting. Who knows? I have no idea.
Well, it did say that there were two of the paintings.
Yeah, one's in his study and one is stored in the Quantum Archive. Somehow. Whatever the Quantum Archive is. I think of it like a big transporter buffer, and you just everything's dematerialized, and then you just call it up and it just appears.
Yeah, that sounds plausible.
Maybe.
In the context of Star Trek.
Yeah, it'd be an efficient way to store stuff. Just floating about in the ether somewhere. Anyway, this is what I do with Star Trek. I just try and nerdily explain everything based on my knowledge of the franchise. That's what we all do.
Though, if that was what it was, then there wouldn't be much call for the building to be so huge.
No, that's true. Unless you need it to be that big to have all the servers that store everything. It's like all the Federation's information in one place. I don't know.
And this is what Star Trek should be about. Just taking a random insignificant detail and then analysing it to death, trying to understand it, only for the writers to turn around and say, yeah, it doesn't mean anything, we just made that shit up.
We didn't think about this. We don't know. Why are you asking us? One thing I did like seeing was a bit of civilian life, because that's not something you see an awful lot of in previous Star Trek stuff. So you see the Boston skyline, and there's billboards, and then later on it's just people walking about, going to their day-to-day lives. I quite like that. It's just a nice little touch. I want to see more of that. I mean, I don't want to see a soap set in the Star Trek universe, but just a little bit more of how people live in the Federation.
Yeah, and I think quite like seeing how the futuristic sci-fi buildings were incorporated into existing landscapes, and just giving a vision of how things could play out in the future.
Yeah, it's all good. Want to see more of it. And Picard has some better civilian clothes than he ever did in The Next Generation, where it's like, oh god, put the uniform back on, please.
Oh, we love the leather jacket. I'm living.
Yeah, he got his badass leather jacket in Insurrection.
Nice.
Yeah. Which is... It's fine, I suppose, as leather jackets go. It's very dull sort of civilian clothes that wouldn't look out of place today, which... Yeah, fine. It's all good. So, in terms of all the mysteries that we have, I'm interested to see how they all play out. So we've got the whole synthetic life form stuff that Dash/Soji is connected to. You have the Romulans, who are coming after Dash for some reason. You have the Romulans that are hanging around in a decommissioned Borg cube. You have this whole thing about how the Federation lost its way. There's an attack on Mars that we'll probably learn a bit more about. There's Picard's career as an admiral, I guess. We've got a lot of things flying around now. I'm not sure how they all connect, and also how it all links to data as well. I'm not sure how it all connects, but I'm confident that they have an idea of where they're going with it.
Yeah, I feel like the whole synthetics, Mars attack, Daj storyline is the primary one, and then we'll see sort of the history of the Federation and the fate of the Romulans intersect with that. But I don't think they're trying to follow all those threads simultaneously to the same extent. That's not the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, the Romulan stuff, that'll be the sort of texture of the background, I think. The Borg will play in significantly. I have a feeling that Borg technology will have something to do with how Daj is able to exist, because Borg technology is typically used to enhance stuff. So I think the Borg will have something to do with that. Hopefully that's not something that comes up in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, and we get reintroduced to two. Yeah, plus we get Jerry Ryan coming back, so...
Yes. And Jonathan Del Arco.
You know there's going to be, indeed,
some Borg stuff.
So, Borg presences are inevitable.
Yes. It's just how they're used could be interesting, because Voyager kind of ruined them. So they're needing a bit of rehabilitating. And I'm not convinced it'll be like the real full-strength Borg either. I think it'll just be these kind of decommissioned offshoots, and then maybe learn a bit about the Borg and how they fit into it through that, but I don't think we'll actually see them in their entirety.
Well, I think the Or like in a show like this, it's going to play back into the themes of sentience and individuality and what actually constitutes a person.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the Borg is that they were a gigantic collective who had no individual sense of self. And so, for lack of a better way of describing them, the decommissioned drones, then they will probably have memories of two different states of being. One where they were a part of a greater whole, and another where they learn to be individuals again. And hopefully it won't be too much repetition over the character arc that 7 of 9 had in Voyager. But I'm fairly confident that they'll think of something different to do with it.
Yeah, and there's also the open question of how haunted by his own experience is Picard at this point. You know, does he still think about his own assimilation, or is he over it? Or and maybe that thing that you were talking about, that dream being a message from Data in some way, maybe his lingering Borg technology is why he's able to do that, because there is stuff about, you know, he can still hear them and when he's nearby them and things like that in First Contact. So, I mean, if they're putting the Borg in and it's a character study of Picard, there's a good chance his experience of the collective will become a significant part of what they're covering. Silence. Everyone must agree with me, because it's complete silence.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something to add to or build on that. But
I made a perfect point and it can't be expanded on.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we've pretty much mined this episode for all it's worth. So before Laura goes and spoils it for all of us, the next 2 episodes that she's been
I did so well. Come on.
Did you though? I mean, am I going to watch episode 2 and be like, that bitch?
You won't know till Friday.
Thursday, perhaps.
Oh, is it? Fair.
Well, Thursday is the US release, and as we all know, I commute to America to watch television.
Of course.
Yeah. Friday is when it appears on Amazon Prime in the UK. I was able to rewatch the first episode last Thursday.
Nice.
Which is nice for reviewing. I hate reviewing on a Friday. Sucks. So if I can do it on a Thursday from here on out, that'll make me slightly happier.
It's going to be expensive travel costs.
Yeah, well, I've got my transporter. So it's fine.
Yeah, well, it certainly stays on your carbon footprint.
Does it though? I mean, how much power do you think a transporter uses?
Renewable energies, I would hope, but who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. A lot though. I mean, if you're turning people into data and transmitting them across a long distance, you would think that would be a lot of kilowatts. It would make your smart meter just go into the red as soon as you press the energize button. If you have such a thing. Yeah, so, as I say, I think we've mined this for everything we can. So, let's just do final statements. Laura, go first. Final statement on Picard as a beginning.
I think it's setting up the show to be like very different from Star Trek shows that came before it, in the sense that it doesn't seem to be serialized, more of an overarching narrative, and also the fact, as suggested by the very title, that it's a character study as opposed to following a ship into various different worlds and, you know, for the sake of exploration. Yeah, the first episode works really well. I think it sets it up, and I think as someone who's not as familiar as some with the Star Trek universe, I thought it was perfectly easy to follow, and I think more or less anyone with any level of knowledge of the Star Trek world can absolutely get something out of it.
Cool. Good summary. Andrew, final statement?
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant beginning to the series. It established its own sense of identity very, very well by showing what it was taking from other Star Trek shows and also what it was doing differently from other Star Trek shows. It didn't reveal too much about what it was going to do. It gave us all of the information that we needed to know to start us off on the story, and I think it bodes quite well for it being revealed at a measured state as the series progresses.
Yeah, pretty much echo those statements. I think it's a great start. I love seeing Patrick Stewart back in this role after thinking I was never going to see it again. I like that it's something new. But also draws on what I like about Star Trek. It shows the versatility of the franchise. I think in the 90s they were doing a lot of different Star Trek things that weren't all that different from one another, but this time it seems that every project is different from the last, and I absolutely love that. So I can't wait to see how this all pans out. And then what will happen next within this universe. I'm really excited to see what will happen next, and yeah, I'm just can't wait to see episode 2 and 3 and 4 and so on until 10, and absolutely love it. Star
and then
Trek's my
season
favourite.
2.
And then season 2. Yeah, Star Trek is my favourite franchise ever, so give me more, and give me more that I like. So that's amazing. So that's it. We'll maybe do an episode once the season ends with the same or different contributors, who knows? Depends if they survive being beamed back to where I lifted them from. If you survive, you're welcome back on any time.
I'll keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you should appear on the podcast. You might die upon entry because of the transporter not being fully serviced, but these are just the risks that you take.
Yeah, keeping life spicy.
Yeah. So, Laura, thank you for being here and talking Picard.
Of course.
And Andrew, thank you for being here and also talking Picard.
Always a pleasure.
And it is also my pleasure. So, would you care to step on the transporter pad, and I will see if I can send you back to where you came from in one piece? That's
Sure thing.
Yeah, sure. You have to get in a character.
That's me. Stepping.
Yeah, okay, and I am now staying as motionless as possible.
Yeah, keep your hands and feet inside the beam at all times.
Yes, because I saw what happened to Barclay.
Or the guy in the motion picture. That was horrible. Or indeed the guy that I tried to beam in before you. Anyway.
You can still smell him.
Yeah, well.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, very disgusting. So on that note, energizing. So that was our discussion of the beginning of Star Trek Picard. Special thanks to Dark Materia for the supplied music. If you enjoyed what you heard, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. iTunes users, please do leave a star rating and a comment. If you want to discuss Picard, Star Trek, or anything else, then you can find us on Facebook and Twitter under Kneel Before Blog, or leave a comment on kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. We do hope you'll join us in the next thrilling instalment of Kneel Before Pod. Engage.